Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard Tactics video. Now before we get into today's video, I would like to say a huge thank you to Veteran Sestaric for sending in some awesome pictures of his old school Imperial Guard and his classic Ogren. Really like the colour scheme that's been used, and I'm just an absolute stickler for some old school cool models. Old but gold. So thank you for sending these pictures in Veteran. They look absolutely fantastic. If anyone else has got any cool pictures they want me to use in my videos, please post them on my Facebook page, or you can email them to me, and there will be links to my Facebook page and my email address down in the description below. But without further ado, let's get into today's video. So what I want to talk about today, guys, is the announcement from Games Workshop that they are going to be shaking the meta up. They recently released a Warhammer community article. Your match play games are about to get a lot more competitive, and let me say there are some really interesting things that they previewed in here. I'm hoping that we're going to get more information as the week goes on. In fact, no, by the time I release this video, there'll be some significant more information coming out, but you know, that's just sod's law, I suppose. What they essentially said, guys, is they're going to be making some significant changes to some secondaries, and in fact, they will be releasing a new mission pack for competitive play. So those of us that have you obviously have your main rulebook missions, and there are match play missions in there, but Games Workshop also does a little separate booklet for it with the competitive missions in there, and there is going to be, from what I understand, a new one of those books, the Grand Tournament 2021 mission pack, and they are going to be tweaking lots of secondaries. Now, first things first, before we even get into what this means for us on the ground, let's take a look at what this means for the gaming scene in general. We've all got very used to the last mission pack, to pick, deploy, scramblers, automatic 10 points, this kind of stuff, engagement fronts, all this kind of stuff. And we know the missions really well as well. No one picks Scarring because apparently it's got a really high win rate if whoever goes first. That's why you don't see it in all the tournaments. So we all know and are very familiar with that. And a big part of the meta, if you really want to be as efficient as possible, is building lists for missions. I expect not just primary and not just secondary, but also primary missions, and knowing what you're likely to face into a tournament. Knowing Games Workshop, what they're going to do is I would take a strong guess at that they are going to revamp the missions. They're not just going to redo the secondaries. We're talking about the missions themselves. Now, we haven't heard anything about them tweaking the primary objectives. So for now, what we know to be true is that it will remain as, hold 1, hold 2, or hold more is where it's scoring primary points. We'll have to keep an eye out for that. But one thing that I would make a good educated guess on, a good wager on, is that new missions will be coming out, and they are going to have a significant impact on the meta alone. I think that's something that a lot of people haven't even considered yet. I think a lot of people are focusing on the secondaries, which we will get to in a moment. But just a little thing I want to get out of the way before we get into that is new primary missions, new deployment maps, all that kind of stuff. That is the kind of thing that Games Workshop likes to release with these kind of books, and I would suspect that's what we'll see. If we don't, no problem. We're all good, and we continue doing what we know we're doing. But I'm gonna take a wager. I'm going to make a bet that we see some new missions, deployment maps, all that kind of stuff. Right, let's move on to the one that everyone's talking about, secondaries. A number of secondaries are being tweaked, one of which is super important. We're going to get to that at the end. We'll go through the first couple though. So the first one that they are changing is they're changing Investigate Sites to Investigate Signal. Now, for those of you that don't know what Investigate Sites is, it's basically if you can get an infantry unit within to the middle of the board, you can start investigating the site, and it's an action. And if you complete the action, you get 3 points. However, the problem with it is that you have to do it in your movement phase, and you can't start the action if there are any enemy models within 6 inches of the middle of the board. Makes it very easy for your opponent to block it. Very easy, because you can't even start it. And to be honest, a lot of 9th edition is about the monster mash and the brawl that's in the middle of the board. So it's actually never picked because it's not good. They're changing it to Investigate Signal, which means that you can begin the action even if there are people within 6 inches of the centre of the board, but it will only be, but it's completed at the end of the turn now. And at the end of the turn, if there's no enemy units within 6 inches, the action is completed successfully. What does this mean? It basically means that you start the action at the beginning of your turn, and then you have your shooting phase, your psychic phase, your charge phase, your assault phase to clear enemies away from 6 inches of the centre of the board, and it gives you that chance to basically start the action, clear the enemies away, finish the action. So that's actually quite clever. I think that adds a certain level of nuance, because what we tended to see with actions is that they were either, you know, started in the movement phase and like completed at the end of the turn, or, you know, started in the movement phase and completed in the following command phase and all that kind of stuff. What we're seeing now is you can start it, but what would I say? The scenario, the situation, the factors, the things that are going on the board the requirements to complete the action don't need to be present at the start of the action, if that makes sense. So Games Workshop's adding this thing, if you can start it, even if you shouldn't, you know, even if there's enemies that are near, you can start it, but you will only get to complete it if there's no one near the centre of the board. It's kind of like before, what I'm trying to say is before you could only start an action if the prerequisites were met. And now it's like you can start the action even if the prerequisites aren't met, but you get a chance to try and make the situation work for that objective. So it's kind of interesting. It's a little bit more nuance that they're adding into secondaries, and I think that's only a good thing. I think adding more nuance is important, because it will allow more secondaries which aren't taken at the moment to start becoming more relevant. So I'm a big fan of changing investigate sites, investigate signal. Let me know what you think. You know, if you think it's a good thing or a bad thing. This goes for all the objectives. Do you think these tweaks are good? Do you think they're bad? Anyway, should have said that at the beginning, but I've said it now, so there we go. So the next change I want to talk about is the change to deploy scramblers. Now this is one that's going to affect a lot of armies, and it's going to affect scions. So they are changing the deploy scramblers, and it's no longer going to be called deploy scramblers. It's going to be called retrieve Octarius data. So that's kind of a cool name, I'm not going to lie. Now, essentially, instead of doing it turn one, you know, deploy a scrambler in your own deployment zone, then the middle, and then the enemy deployment zone, instead, you will be able to get extra points for completing the objective in multiple table quarters. So, what they've said is it's going to be more reliable than the previous all or nothing proposition, but it also requires a greater degree of coordination and strategic thinking. So, kind of interesting. They haven't gone into the specifics of if it's going to still be 10 points, if it's going to be 15 points. I suspect, and hopefully we'll get more information on this, I suspect it's going to go from being a 10-point one, you know, you score the action 3 times, 10 points at the end of the game. I think it's going to be one where you can get points throughout the game. So if you are in, it might be a little bit like it feels to me like there might be some overlap there with engage on all fronts. Now they haven't talked about engage on all fronts in this article, but the fact they're talking about multiple table quarters being more reliable, less of an all or nothing, this is one I think we need to keep an eye on. We may see engage on all fronts go away, and it may be that retrieve Octarius data is going to be a combination of the traditional deploy scramblers and engage on all fronts. So we haven't got a huge amount of information on this one yet. This is the one I really want to keep an eye on. Very interesting, because currently in the competitive meta, engage on all fronts is basically an auto take for a lot of armies. You can really build into it, and the same goes for deploy scramblers. So if they've merged those two into one, that'll be kind of interesting. What I'm imagining here is it's going to be an engage on all fronts, but you don't just get it for moving around. You actually have to move into table quarters and complete an action. So it'll be engage on all fronts with an action, which means if you want to score engage on all fronts, you won't be able to shoot as well. That's what I suspect it'll be. Let's keep an eye on it. That's my second bet of this video, second wager. Hopefully we can come back in 6 months and this won't be a bit of a laughing stock of a video and it wasn't totally off. But those are my that's my guess on that one. Now let's move to the third and final big old change that they have announced, which is that they are changing Thin Their Ranks. Okay, in fact, Thin Their Ranks is going away. Okay, and instead they're replacing it with something called No Prisoners. All I want to say, guys, is our prayers to the Emperor have been heard big time. I'm not making a joke out of this one. I'm actually talking about it quite seriously because it is such a welcome update and it's such a good move by Games Workshop. Basically, guys, No Prisoners counts the wounds characteristic of destroyed models, not the number of models, the wounds characteristics, as long as they aren't a vehicle, monster, or character. What does this mean? It means the enemy will no longer be able to stack, bring it down, and thin their ranks in one go. That is huge. That is so huge, it cannot be overstated. The implications for that are just massive. To give you a couple of ideas, straight away, as I said, you can't stack them. What does that mean? Previously, if you took a Chimera, or a Lehman, Chimera, we'll go over the Chimera first. Took Chimera, and the enemy took Bring It Down and Thin Their Ranks against you. For each Chimera they killed, they got 2 points. One for Bring It Down and one for Thin Their Ranks. And also, if you had an Armoured Fist squad inside that Chimera, or Guardsman squad to use the modern terminology, if you had a 10-man squad inside that Chimera, and the enemy killed the Chimera and the 10-man squad, not a difficult feat to achieve in our high damage output 9th edition game that we find ourselves in, the enemy would get 3 points for doing it. Because they'd get 1 point for Bring It Down, 1 point for Thin the Ranks in the Chimera, and another point for Thin the Ranks for killing the 10-man infantry squad. Horrendous. The second thing is that it used to mean that Lehman Russes, even with the changes to Bring It Down, reducing the number of points you got for killing vehicles, still gave away 3 victory points. Because you used to give away 2 points to Bring It Down with the Lehman Russ, and another point for Thin the Ranks. That's all gone away. That's all gone away. Okay? That's all gone away. Basically, because No Prisoners does not count towards vehicles, monsters, or characters, it means that if an enemy kills a Chimera, they get 1 point for it. If they take Bring It Down. That's it. That's it. And if the enemy kills the Chimera and the 10-man squad, they get 2 points max. We don't know exactly how No Prisoners is going to work. I'm going to assume it's going to 10 infantry are still going to give away a point for it. We'll have to see. But again, what is this doing? It is cutting the amount of bleed that Guard gives away in secondaries by another 33%. We saw a huge staunching of the bleed with the change to Bring It Down. Huge. Previously, we saw on Lehman Russes 33% less secondary bleed. We saw on Chimeras 50% less secondary bleed. Well, guess what? We've just seen another 33% decrease from the Lehman Russ and another 50% decrease from your Chimeras. At the beginning of 9th edition, a Chimera would give away three victory points. 3 victory points for Bring It Down and Thin the Ranks when they were stacked. Now, a year on, that Chimera will give away 1. That Chimera will give away 1 victory point, and it will only give it away via Bring It Down. That is huge. That is huge. And again, Lehman Russ used to give away 4 victory points. Now, it will give away 2 victory points. The Chimera has gone down. The bleed from taking mechanized assets like Chimeras has decreased by 66%. The bleed for Lehman Russes has decreased overall by 50%. Huge. Absolutely huge. This will change the meta fundamentally. And there's 2 aspects I want to talk about. Number 1, how it's going to affect Guard, because that's why we're all here, right? And then number 2, I want to touch on how it's going to affect other armies. So first up, how it's going to affect Guard. I think we're going to see a significant shift towards armoured Guard with mechanised support, or either pure armoured, or armoured with a bit of mechanised, or a pure mechanised force. That's what I think we're going to see. I think it's just I think it's going to make Scions really, really powerful. And I think regular Met Guard is going to be having a great time too. Because when you think about it, if you turn up to the battlefield now with 9 Chimeras, and every single one of those Chimeras is chock full of infantry, not necessarily Guardsman squads, I'm talking veteran squads, special weapon teams, heavy command squads, veterans, you know, all your heavy hitters. Your Chimeras will at most give away 9 points for secondaries. That's not a good pick for your opponent. Not a good pick. There's a for those of you that don't, you know, aren't really into this kind of thing, there's a generally, it's like an unwritten rule. It's called like a soft cap. If a secondary objective won't get you at least 10 points, it's not worth taking in a tournament. Okay. If you turn up with 9 Chimeras, that's only 9 points. So by that soft cap, it's not worth taking. That unofficial, that unwritten rule, it's not worth taking. So you're straight away, you're having a great time. Also, the 90 infantry you're banging in those Chimeras is also only going to give away 9th in the rank points. Again, not enough points to be worth picking Thin the Ranks against Guard. Before this announcement, Thin the Ranks would still have been a fantastic choice against that mechanized infantry horde. Now it's a terrible choice. It's a terrible choice. So it's big. I think we are going to see, you know, and again, you know, with pure armored lists not giving away, not stacking up, you know, I think it's going to be big. I think this is, I think overall, talking it through now, I think this is going to be bigger for mech infantry. Just think about this: Scion squad after Scion squad, Taurox Prime after Taurox Prime, a fully motorized force that has the firepower of Scions, with the durability of mass armoured vehicles, with the points efficiency of being able to take lots of armoured vehicles which have good output but that are cheap enough. Dakar Primes are 110, 120 points. It's not bad. You've got all those factors. You've got points efficiency, you've got firepower, you've got relative durability, and now you have no secondary bleed. You have no secondary bleed from that list now. It's fantastic. So I think that we're going to see a big way. We're going to see Met Guard coming back. What do I think this means for Pure Infantry Guard? I think Pure Infantry Guard isn't affected by this. I'm going to have some players who are banging on the keyboard straight away going, what do you mean? Clearly it means Pure Infantry Guard are terrible now, blah, blah. No, not at all. Pure Infantry Guard's effectiveness remains the same. It just means that other playstyles for Guard have become more effective. Now, you guys know that I love my Pure Infantry, but you also know that I, play competitively and I like to play to win. This could mean that Pure Infantry Guard is no longer needed to be even remotely viable for Tournament Guard. Okay? Which, for me, which could be seen as like a shadow nerf to Pure Infantry Guard. For me, that's obviously sad because I love my Pure Infantry and I always like being able to say it's the most competitive thing. But for the wider Guard community, it's only a good thing. I love painting up 400, 500 Guardsmen. And I know there's many of you guys out there love painting up 400, 500 Guardsmen. But I would say that we are we're in a minority overall, And I would say the vast majority of Guard players prefer taking a hybrid army, a mixed, combined arms force, or a mechanized force. A lot of people like taking mechanized Guard or tank Guard. And that's good for those guys. And so what I think overall this will do is it will boost those of the Guard playstyles whilst, tempering the need to take Pure Infantry Guard. And I'm hoping, I'll have to let it settle, I'm hoping we get a happy medium. I'm hoping armoured, mechanised and infantry guard all become equally as viable and it comes down to player choice. That's what I'm hoping. My fear is it will mean infantry guard is just simply not as good. And that would be sad. But I don't think we're there yet. We'll have to see more. We'll have to see more reveals. I'm hoping this will mean a nice happy medium. I'm hoping it'll breathe life back into hybrid guard, which as we've seen on my next battle report, I made a lot of mistakes in that, but as we've seen, hybrid guard does struggle. So big implications for guard. Last thing I just want to touch on real quickly, because this video has gone a little bit longer than I wanted it to. Last thing I want to touch on is what does this mean for other armies? I think this is going to be the tables are going to be turned. Oh, how the turntables. I think this could be a real blow to elite infantry armies because it's based on wound characteristic. All those marine armies that are turning up with 50 or 60 infantry models, the majority of which are Gravis armor, Blade Guard veterans, intercessors, multiple wound models, okay? Which, when you actually look at the amount of wounds they're putting on the table, they're putting on more than 100. Easily more than 100 wounds. Easily. You know, if you've got, you know, your 3 squads of Eradicators, they've got 3 wounds each. That's 45 wounds across 3 squads of 5. That's what loads of armies are turning up with. Then you've got the aggressors on top. The heavy intercessors which are coming out. The regular... Anyway, my point is that most marine armies are rocking up to the field of battle with 100 plus wounds of elite infantry. That's just science. That's just a scientific fact. How funny would it be if those armies are now very susceptible to no prisoners, and those armies which have been bleeding the guard white on our thin the ranks and bring it down stacking, and that's gone away now, and instead we will now bleed them white, because every intercessor that you kill, every intercessor squad that you kill could be a no prisoners point. You kill 3 intercessor squads, you've got 3 no prisoners points. On top of, you know, if you kill a Gravis intercessor squad, a squad of Eradicators, sorry, you're looking at least 1, maybe 2 of this new no prisoners points. We don't know exactly how it'll work. It'll be very interesting. So I think this could be a serious... Is it the death of elite infantry? No. Is it a temperance of their current domination? I hope so. I really hope so. I think this will be... It'll be really... It'll mean that horde armies won't bleed quite as much, and elite armies will bleed a bit more. And that, you know, if you're bringing one down a bit and one up a bit, they meet in the middle. So that's what I'm hoping there. Okay, guys, I'm going to leave this video here. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. I'm very excited for this. Games Workshop themselves have said, you know, that the new no prisoners and changes to bring it down also mean character armies made of returning monsters or Ashton Tyrant tanks or Orc vehicles are more viable. That's fantastic. That's what we all needed to hear. They've even acknowledged Ashton Tyrant tanks as a thing that was struggling. It means they've got their eye on the meta. It means they've got that their thoughts are with, you know, on guard and turn into orcs at the moment, which is great. That's what we like to see. Games Workshop, that's what we like to hear. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you have enjoyed what you see here, please consider heading on over to the Patreon page. There will be a link down in the description below. Yeah, massive thank you to all my Patreon supporters. Honestly, without you guys, this channel just would be just a big bag of, well, best not to think about it. One thing I want to say for the Patreon supporters is that I will be investing in some new terrain. I've done 3 battle reports with the current new terrain, and they've all gone down really, really well. So I'm going to be getting some more terrain because I don't want it to get too samey. So that's a little bit of tidbit of information for you guys. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and of course, I'll see you guys next time.